So my original draft for this review ended up turning into a large list of insults and a very long rant. So I thought I would just share some of those with you quickly. The map of tiny perfect things is the reason I'm happy film is flammable. If I had a nickel for every problem I had with this movie, not only would I have enough money to fill this tiny cup, but I would also have enough grounds to ask for a serious raise because this is a terrible movie. This is better than this movie. And this is garbage. There should be a fourth emergency service to prevent people from watching this movie. When I was a kid, in the same afternoon, I fell into a blackberry bush and got stung by a bee in the neck. I've enjoyed both those moments more than the 99 minutes I spent watching this movie. This movie seems like leverage to get Michael Bay nominated for an Oscar. The 78% of critics on Rotten Tomatoes who said, yeah, this movie's okay, should never be allowed to watch movies again. The Map of Tiny Perfect Things is directed by Ian Samuels and stars Kyle Allen as Mark, a teenager who's stuck in a temporal anomaly causing him to repeat the same day over and over again. Eventually, a girl named Margaret joins his time loop, and now they both repeat the same day with each other. Eventually, they start visiting areas to share funny moments or inspirational things that happen throughout the day with each other, so they work together to create the titular map, the map of tiny, perfect things. This movie came out a couple months ago in February on Amazon Prime Video, so it's a fairly recent movie. I had no idea what this movie was about, except that it's a time loop, which I knew from the 5 seconds of the YouTube ads I couldn't skip. So I went into this with an open mind, and I finished it extremely disappointed. I think this had the potential to be good, because on paper it sounds really good, and I kinda wanted to like this movie. And when I watched it, it just didn't work for me. It's really bad. Here's a bit of history for you. In 1993, Harold Ramis directed a movie starring Bill Murray called Groundhog Day. It focuses on Bill Murray's character in a time loop. And a lot of movies took inspiration from Groundhog Day, especially movies made in the 2010s and really early 2020s. 2011, Source Code. 2014, Edge of Tomorrow. 2017, Happy Death Day. 2019, Happy Death Day to You. 2020, Palm Springs. 2021, The Map of Tiny Perfect Things. I really like Groundhog Day. I think it's a really fun movie, and I try to make it a point where I watch it every Groundhog Day. What some of these movies fail to realize is that part of the reason everyone likes Groundhog Day is because of Bill Murray's charming character, his usual sarcastic, apathetic persona. Because Bill Murray can't be in every movie, these movies need their own spin on the idea to make it unique and still entertaining for people to watch. For example, Happy Death Day is Groundhog Day as a slasher film. Edge of Tomorrow is Groundhog Day but like a video game, because it has a guy who dies and gets further each time he repeats the day. Usually these new changes are big changes to the formula that make a big difference and make the movie more interesting. It tries to change the genre drastically, or at least add some sort of interesting part of it. The Map of Tiny Perfect Things' new spin on the Groundhog Day formula is add another person. This is a movie that relies mostly on conversation. I have no problem with that. I actually really like movies about conversations. In fact, not only is one of my favorite directors Quentin Tarantino, who's very famous for directing dialogue-heavy movies, but my top 3 favorite movies of all time are 12 Angry Men, Annie Hall, and Collateral. All of these movies are entirely based on conversations between interesting characters. In these movies, when these interesting characters have conversations, they tend to move around, but that's so we don't have a whole movie where the blocking is just sitting in chairs. I appreciate it when the actors get up and walk around a bit or wave their arm around or give a demonstration to prove a point. What the map of I can't do it anymore. I'm not saying the full name of this movie anymore. I'm just calling it Tiny Perfect Things because I don't want to say the full name. What Tiny Perfect Things does is put our two main characters in some random background, and then they talk as if nothing's happening. In one scene, they talk about what to do with infinite time while they trespass into a restaurant kitchen, as if, hey, this is a normal thing to do. At one point, I couldn't stop thinking, stay still for a second! In fact, I said they were talking about what to do with infinite time. I think that's all they talk about in the entire movie. The conversations are uninteresting because they focus in on one topic for the whole 100 minutes. In terms of creativity, this is a very lacking movie, and I don't mean originality. Well, actually, yeah, it's pretty unoriginal, but I'll get to that later. I mean that this movie doesn't have any sort of metaphorical value, especially to its wardrobe choices and cinematography. One shot in the entire movie that I'll talk about later has metaphorical value, but everything else is just there to serve its original purpose of being there to be there. For example, in film, clothes aren't just to make sure your characters aren't naked the entire movie. It's also used to show something that the viewers have to gather on their own. A good example of this is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, where everyone has a piece of clothing on that symbolizes either something about their character or what kind of evil ex they are. And I like that. Even in real life, you can use this. Certain pieces of clothing can imply somebody's occupation. What Tiny Perfect Things does is throw whatever clothes on our characters. There is nothing important about their clothing choices. There is no implication to one's character or to one's deeper meaning to a Star Wars t-shirt. Honestly, this movie had so much potential to be original and interesting, and instead it reused the plot of Groundhog Day, but then said,
Player 2 has entered the game.
At first, I liked this idea because I thought that these characters at first hate each other, but later they fall in love because they repeat the day and learn from their surroundings and mistakes to both grow as people and appreciate and fall in love with each other. That would be a good idea, right? It's what the movie does, right? I mean, that's what I thought would happen before I saw the movie. No, wrong, Zoe. You could never be more wrong. These two spend the entire movie having a bunch of uninteresting conversations with each other, and spending time with other characters I was vastly uninterested in. Tiny Perfect Things isn't actually clear on this whole time loop idea. Granted, it's impossible for a time loop to come to fruition, but this movie is just completely ignorant on its own made up idea of an impossible occurrence. It's stated that the titular map will disappear at the end of the day because it is outside of the time loop and will reset at midnight. But other things will stick with our characters no matter what. I just wish there was some sort of consistency to a plot so infallible, so incomprehensible that you can make up something on the spot, and as long as it's not that, it'll be right. In fact, at one point, they say that their time loop is caused by a singularity. No further explanation, just one word, and that's all, folks. Well, I didn't understand this impossible idea at all, but using one singular word to explain everything made the entire movie make sense. I'll give the map of Tiny Perfect Things an A+. Thanks for watching, stay safe and watch good movies. Bye! Okay, wait. I'm not done yet. For a majority of the third act, we don't even see our main character. I understand why they took him out of the story, and I understand the metaphor it serves, but the movie focuses the third act on the other main character, Margaret, and I was seriously uninterested in her. I think she had the potential to be an interesting character, but because we only learn about her in the third act, to be honest, I just didn't care. The last two shots of this movie feel very out of place. They kind of made me think, is that really the end? Like, is that how the movie is supposed to end? It's an awful way of ending the movie because they do it by wrapping up the most insignificant and uninteresting storyline in the entire movie. If you're gonna watch a romance movie, watch Annie Hall, watch Aladdin, watch Casablanca, Breakfast at Tiffany's, Gone with the Wind. Those are all incredible movies with a lot of charm to them, and they're all better and funnier than this movie. This is supposed to be a romance movie, and the romance didn't even work for me. It was by far one of the weakest aspects of the entire movie. The romantic scenes are very infrequent, and they start with something that isn't actually romantic. And when there are scenes that seem romantic, nothing. Like, they're at a lake watching birds, nothing. They're watching Time Bandits, boom! Romance. The infrequency as well makes the scenes that are romantic seem very out of place. It turns one of the main storylines into a side quest. The actual titular map of Tiny Perfect Things barely has enough significance. It's kind of just something that they look at one time and then they do something with it later. It seems weird that the title object of the movie is just some little prop that they use twice. There's a side character who's friends with our main character, Mark, who gets way too much screen time. He's really not important, he doesn't say anything to affect the story, and the metaphor he's supposed to represent is the same metaphor every other character represents. In fact, there are a few characters who feel very throwaway for the exact same reason. They all represent the exact same metaphor every side character in this movie represents. This movie does something that I hate to see in movies. Modernization. I had this same problem with Knives Out, and it's what ruined Ralph Breaks the Internet, the Emoji Movie, and all three Fred movies. Don't put memes in movies, okay? Don't say okay boomer or woke in a movie. When you add some sort of modern statement, such as memes, you make it so the movie ages really poorly, really quickly. Here's the simplest way to explain it. When you put memes or some sort of modern political statement into a movie, you have to put it in before the movie's released. And so you take a gamble. You have to think, will this stay relevant as long as the movie has to be released? And usually it doesn't. You have maybe a week to get it released after you put that meme into the movie, because memes don't last very long. And so once you have this irrelevant meme in your movie, you now have a segment of your movie that no one thinks is funny. It means that this movie was made for a present day that happened a couple weeks ago or even months ago. It'll become as unpopular as the meme or political statement does. And memes are actually worse, because memes die extremely quickly. They last for maybe a week or possibly a month if people find it really funny, then it's never heard of again. It's like investing in Beanie Babies. It's stupid. It's a fad, and in a couple of years, no one will get it. And by the way, in case the screenwriters didn't know, I don't think anybody has said okay boomer since 2019. So why is it in a 2021 movie? There's a lot of serious things that happen within the characters we focus on, Mark and Margaret, that can have serious repercussions on their relationship. And usually, the movie has no plan on addressing them beyond that, or even acknowledging it. The movie just carries on as if nothing ever happened. Tiny Perfect Things has so many montages, and I mean a lot. You'd think 2 is a lot, maybe 3. Wrong. This movie has 4 to 6 or 7 montages at least. Every montage in this movie as well is just Mark and Margaret, our main characters, doing something with infinite time. So we have 4 to 6 or 7 montages of just 2 people running around being impulsive. Surprisingly, this movie did something good. I mean, there's only a couple things that I liked from this movie. Somehow, there's a shot where a girl is sitting in the middle of a bench and a moving truck stops behind her, and the logo on the moving truck is a pair of wings, and so it looks like she has wings. But she sees that someone is standing and probably needs to sit, so she moves aside where it no longer looks like she has wings, but now someone can sit down. I can't really explain what the metaphor is. Well, I mean I can, but I won't, because I don't do spoilers anymore. but I'll leave it open for interpretation. Our main character, Mark's storyline, was also kind of interesting to me. His father is going through what seems to be a midlife crisis, and in the day he repeated, his mother works from morning to after midnight. So if he continues the time loop, he'll never see his mother again. And rather than start the movie when the time loop starts and just show us 30 minutes of somebody being super confused, we start the movie with our main character going through the day and perfecting everything to work in his favor. I really like that idea. It introduces him as somebody who's gotten very used to this time loop, and it makes it so that the thing that changes everything isn't the time loop itself, but actually the introduction of another character. I also liked how, unlike Groundhog Day, this movie more of focuses on the morality of repeating a time loop. In Groundhog Day, the main character, Phil, uses a time loop to become a better person. In Tiny Perfect Things, our main characters, Mark and Margaret, sometimes argue about the morality that their time loop has and how it makes people relive a day that causes terrible things to happen to said people. So it asks us to make the decision whether to perfect a day at the expense of everyone else or continue in a timeline where time is non-renewable, but no one suffers. I like this idea, but I would have liked it a whole lot more if this were some sort of pressing issue the entire movie. But it stays silent for the entire runtime and then springs up on us out of nowhere in the third act and acts like it was this huge problem the whole movie. I think this is my least favorite movie of all time. I know I had some nice things to say about it, but in reality, there were some minor ideas and one shot, and the only actual good thing was the introduction of morality to the storyline, and the movie still screwed it up. I'm gonna give the Map of Tiny Perfect Things an F. Somehow, I'd still recommend this movie, but only if you frequently watch bad movies and you haven't gotten around to watching Ambiance, the 30-day-long movie. If you're anyone else, you'd be more entertained coloring your eyes in with a gray crayon and listening to the deep tracks of a yodeling band. Honestly, I would rather watch Simple Jack than this movie.
Simple Jack, the story of a mentally impaired farmhand who can talk to animals, was a box office disaster that many critics called one of the worst movies of all time.
Obviously, I've gotta recommend the original time loop, Groundhog Day. Earlier, I also complained about all the montages in this movie, and then I remembered that Rocky IV is calculated to be 25 to 31.9% montages. I don't really know if I'm recommending it to you or warning you. Tiny Perfect Things is entirely conversation-based, and I wasn't at all interested in these conversations. But one of the best writers of dialogue, in my opinion, is Quentin Tarantino, and I've only seen 4 of his movies, and out of the 4 that I've seen, I like Reservoir Dogs better than Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I like Pulp Fiction better than Reservoir Dogs, and just, this is my opinion, I think Kill Bill is the best of his movies. But I'd still recommend checking all 4 of those out because they're really good. Like I said, I like the moral dilemma our characters face. It's interesting to see a genre that originates from comedy and add morality to it. A movie that does something like that is Collateral, where a simple genre, in its case action, discusses morality and philosophy. And I said that the romance in here didn't work for me. It's infrequent and feels very out of place. But have I got a romance for you? If you've seen my channel, you should know what I'm gonna say. You should watch Annie Hall. It's an incredible romance movie, and it and Collateral are my favorite movies of all time. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed another one of my videos. Before you leave, why don't you comment what your least favorite movie is? Mine's The Map of Tiny Perfect Things. After you do that, you can stay safe and watch good movies. Bye!